that is empty. It's a repair shop. Why have a repair? If we could improve the situation of power, money, resources, I think healthcare improve. This last two slides just to show you the vastness of it all. So you can go anywhere with this. CDC, 122 countries around the world webinar. Next slide. I won't go into the details of the next slide, but Echo platform gives you a lot of facilities. And the last, just skim through the next two slides, please. You need nothing more than a laptop to do this job. You can make it as sophisticated. Last slide. And the learner, like I said, frontline workers in JEEViKA can just have their cell phone or a tablet and they are done. That's all they really need. And let's end it, please. Thank you. Last slide. Yeah. So this is where we are today with this technology, and we are here to offer this technology free of cost, at no cost whatsoever to any partner in any vertical that wants to join us. And we believe that we can help JEEViKA a lot, especially because you're working in the community. We can teach you how to connect them. We can teach you how to, because we faced it over the last 5 years in India. In India, we've been operational till 2016. Is the 2016 to 20, this is what we've achieved in 4 years. And so we are here to offer this help to anybody that would like it. I think my 20 minutes are done. So thank you. And I'll take any questions now or later as you wish.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anand. And thank you for just that very story, a lot of rapid expansion and very inspiring for us. We have one other speaker and we'll take the questions together. I'd just like to hand over to Mr. Bala for one announcement, please.
Thank you, Gautam. I take this opportunity to welcome Arvind Kumar Chaudhary, sir, Principal Secretary, Rural Development Department, in this webinar. Thank you so much, sir, for taking time out and then joining us. And also, I'd like to welcome and also thank Dr. Sunil Anand and also Sri Tanuj Bhojwani. Very insightful presentation from Dr. Sunil. We are looking forward to looking forward to hear from Tanuj and also from Principal Secretary Arvind sir. I'll not waste time, and I thank you, Gautam, for letting me in between. You please carry on with your
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ryan, and welcome, Mr. Chaudhary as well. So our next speaker in this session is Mr. Tanuj Bhojwani. Mr. Tanuj, thank you. He's just joined there as well. I'll just get his introduction. So again, another speaker with a wealth of digital infrastructure experience. Mr. Tanuj Bhojwani, he's a fellow at iSpirit Foundation and also a co-chair of the Digital Public Goods Alliance. He's been working to solve financial inclusion for India, and he's also a co-author with a book with Mr. Nandan Nilekani on building inclusive internet. So Mr. Tanuj Bhojwani, I think you're familiar with the challenge or also the excitement we have in terms of how we can better strengthen the system through digital infrastructure, both reaching the people but also frontline workers. So over to you, Mr. Tanuj Bhojwani. Please go ahead with your talk.
Cool. I thank you so much for having me, Gautam. Thank you, Mr. Bala and Mr. Arvind Chaudhary. It's always wonderful to hear from others in the field and see the work that happens. Especially in the pandemic, you can get locked down and forget. I just want to, let me just start by sharing my screen. Let me know when you can see it. It's a message from you, Gautam. 1 second. Okay, can you see this? Can you see why we build digital public goods? Okay, perfect. So I thought I'll start with, since many of you may not know me, just very quickly, why am I here? Why am I speaking to you? Why my organization is relevant. So I work at a not-for-profit think tank called iSpirit. It's spelled slightly differently, ISPIRT. It stands for Indian Software Product Industry Roundtable. You'll understand all of this in a few minutes. I want to start with a different story though. Back in 2008, only 17% of people in India had bank accounts. Financial exclusion was rampant, right? All of you work in this field, so I don't need to dive deeper into the story. But here is how we did compared to the world. In 2011, for our GDP per capita, where we were in terms of financial inclusion was not too far away from the trend line. But in 7 short years, we managed to jump. We jumped, even though our GDP did not increase, the percentage of adults with accounts increased dramatically. The BIS, the Bureau of International Settlements, the central bank of central banks, put out a paper which said that what India did in those 6-7 years would have taken 46 years otherwise had they waited for regular GDP growth. So whatever this intervention was useful. Now, what was this intervention? Frankly, it can't be one magic bullet, but we believe the most critical components, and so does the BIS, was that there was political will. There was an actual targeted campaign like the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. There was a central bank who was proactive, who thought of its role as not just regulating transactions, but also making sure financial inclusion happens. But the third piece is technology. That technology was called the India Stack. What is the India Stack? The India Stack is essentially digital infrastructure, and that's going to be the theme of what we talk about today. Infrastructure and building infrastructure components as opposed to building solutions, building software, building, the way that we usually think about this stuff. India Stack was three things, three layers actually. It was many things, but three layers: identity, proving who you are in a digital transaction; payments, actually being able to send money, which has challenges and risks that are very specific from, say, sending an email, because an email can fail or not deliver or send multiple times. But money, you need certain constraints on how it moves. And finally, data. The data that we keep talking about is so valuable, is the new oil, etc. But who's thinking about how to make this data work for the people, for the constituency we care about, rather than for the big corporations who are very adept at dealing with this data? And for each of these, we created SLE infrastructure blocks that would work on this, right? So the other thing was, this is not one large project. Nobody sat down and said, let's make an India Stack. Each of these was individual components, and each of them was built atomically. But at the same time, the loose, larger picture of how they work together was kept in mind. It's like Lego blocks. You're designing each Lego block. You're not yet imagining what houses or what structures you'll build, but you're building each Lego box to be compatible with the other, right? iSpirit, as the organization I work in, builds 4 types of public goods. I'm going to be focusing only on the rightmost here on platforms. Today, we'll talk about the rest some other time, but we end up building these things as public goods. Why? Because population scale problems require coordination across Sarkar, Samaj and Bazaar, right? The government entities, organizations like JPAL or ours, and the markets, people who are ultimately giving livelihoods to these people in the most sustainable manner, right? We all need to work together. And therefore, this slide, little self-serving, but we put ourselves and we think of ourselves more like a university, right? That we are trying to figure out what is the best way to solve this problem in the longer arc. Despite political changes, despite policy changes, despite changes in the demography, what solutions are perennial, right? That's where we come from, and that's what I want to talk about. What makes iSpirit special is that we're volunteer driven. Completely everybody you see at iSpirit is from a tech industry or a tech background. We've worked in software or startups and Google and Facebook and all of that, but they're looking for something else to do, something more meaningful. So most of our volunteers donate their time and effort, and that's why we're able to keep our footprint small and are able to help the government with these large projects like Aadhaar, UPI, etc., and make a meaningful impact. That's our model. Now, what I want to tell you, though, where the presentation really starts, is that with this infrastructure that we have, right, we are now seeing different things being built on top of it, whether it's by the market or by the government. We're seeing solutions come now. For about 7-8 years, there was infrastructure building that happened. There was a sowing phase, and now we're seeing the harvest of these infrastructure products. And this is not unique. This is how the world operates, right? When think about something like Uber, right? A very useful way of getting around the city. When Android was being made, this mobile software was being made, nobody was thinking that one day I will call a taxi from this phone. That is why I'm building this phone, right? They didn't start by putting that as a requirement. Oh, I need to have a software which does this and does that and does this and does that, and then they start building it, right? What they did was they started building atomic blocks, each of which you can build on top of. This is a known thing in software, the known paradigm in software that has become sort of dominant since the early 2000s, right? However, the government doesn't think about, or at least I would like to say in my experience and what I've seen across departments, the government doesn't think about how software is made. They worry more about how software is purchased, right? So the task of dealing with a software services vendor, right, prevents us from thinking infrastructure. Because then an infrastructure, whether it's useful or not, that the success of that is determined way into the future from when you're building it, right? So it requires a certain conviction and leadership and vision when we think about software in terms of infrastructure building blocks. What happens is that, just like I gave you the Uber example, when Android was made, nobody knew this is the app they were going to make. Nobody knew that these are the apps that are going to be successful. Nobody knew that this is how it will change the economy. But they still built it anyway. Because functionally, that one block of software, that micro function, was very useful, right? And therefore, they made that happen. And then because that piece existed, now people's imagination was unlocked and we saw solutions. I think this connects very well with the point the previous speaker was making, that you go in with a model where you believe a teacher will teach students. That is the role of the teacher and the role of the students. But then I saw that diagram that says actually the peer learning is very important and we need to facilitate that. And this is the kind of surprises and innovation that we kind of choke and curtail when we think of software as one large piece that we have to deliver. Right. So for background, I'm helping the NRLM currently come up with their sort of new generation of MIS. And even there, we're calling it Lok OS, sort of an OS of the people. Right. Because we want it to be like an operating system that allows new things and new livelihood applications to come on top. Instead, what we usually see in the government is that even for this, they want to do RFP, FRS, SRS. I mean, we've been, that was what we were taught is the original model of doing software. And it was true in the early 90s, early 2000s. That was what was considered best practice. But we've not evolved from there. So what happens is that instead of thinking of design, architecture, and usability, we're thinking about how do we make sure that the contract is so watertight that the software services vendor can't, I can catch him by his neck and he can't go away and he can't screw me over. Right? Like that seems to be the dominant sort of concern. So therefore, the procurement process is driving software design rather than software design driving the procurement process, and we need to reconsider. So if you think if this premise makes sense, I have a second presentation on how do you actually architect these solutions to be useful, right? So here, this is the architecture principles. I will not get into a specific software. I am using an example from something that I believe is relevant for training the field force. But let's dive straight into what are the principles that make infrastructure building or software infrastructure, digital infrastructure useful. The number one thing you have to remember is that we're looking at unified, not uniform, right? The two pictures in front of you tell a story, right? There is one way to scale, which is on the right of your screen, which is uniform. Make everything modular and same and then just repeat everywhere for everyone, irrespective of their context and their needs, right? And that is how we usually think about scale in software. Whereas a unified approach says, look, everything needs to work together. It looks more like a forest than a farm, factory farm, right? And this is the ability to create and coexist diverse solutions on shared infrastructure. And I would say that for a country like ours, this is one of the most important things that we forget. We build some app, we pilot it in some village, we show that it works, and then we take it outside and it doesn't, right? And then we wonder why, or we blame other factors. So the Ministry of Education also did this department. They had to do teacher development, right? And they have this platform, Diksha. Now, what instead of doing it as this one block, this is the Diksha platform, the idea, and since iSpirit and HStep got involved in the architecture, we said, no, think of all functionality as microservices. What are you looking to do? What are the functions? And then each function, can you encapsulate? Can you sort of draw a boundary around it and say, this is what I need to do, this atomic thing, right? And therefore, you start dividing your problem also into sub-problems. You have content, you have training, you have a certification of that training, and you have rewards for doing that training to keep people motivated and encourage them to come back and use the platform. And if each of those can be given as an atomic Lego block, what we can then do is we can invite another set of stakeholders who are much closer to the problem to come and design solutions on top of that infrastructure, right? So we're stepping away from the mindset of I have to solve this right now in one shot with this one software to let me start creating things that people can play with so that help create the solutions that will actually finally work in their context. And to do this, you start by unbundling. You break down, like I said, the design of a system into microservices. You think deep and hard, okay, if I need to send money, right, what are the steps? Is it first I need to make sure that the person I'm sending to account number or name or whatever is verified. That's a verification microservice. Make that separate. That will be useful and reusable in multiple things. The actual act of sending might require something like logging in or authenticating yourself or proving that, hey, I am actually Tanuj and this is my bank account and I need to send money. that act of authentication, just proving who you are, that can be separated out into a microservice. And then the actual money transfer is just one more microservice, and so on and so forth. You take anything like training, logging in, choosing, searching for the right content, creating a course, delivering that content, delivering some quiz questions at the end of those content. Each of those, if you start unbundling and thinking as microservices, you have created powerful tools for yourself to reuse and remix in a way that might be more useful than what you first imagined. Sorry, interoperability. This is very important, right? Imagine if every time your car's tire broke down or door broke down, you didn't go to Suzuki and they didn't have like standard spare parts, but instead said, no, we'll have to design a part for your car. So first we'll come, we'll take measurements, we'll hire some experts, we'll do this. That would just make everything, just a small change also would make it frustrating. This is again how we do software in the government, right? Is that we don't think about interfaces, interoperability and specs anymore. We just go straight from SRS, FRS to coding. So if we could somehow just design these sort of standards, and HTML, etc., are great examples of this. HTML did not describe the whole web. What it did was it gave us standards so that anybody can make their website. Your website, my website will look different, but at the same time, it will work together. Interoperability, again, a very important principle when you're designing these services. Replaceability, right, is the same idea that if you are able to, if it's a modular block, you can actually take it down, repair it, and put it back, or put some temporary function in the meanwhile while you're repairing this thing. Much like like parts in a car, and that's essentially how the automobile industry also managed to standardize, scale, and was able to make cars affordable for a lot of people, right? Similarly, configurability. Make sure that your microservice or your function is not rigid. Your infrastructure is not rigid and defined only for one context, right? If you it's not just that I can pay money if both of us are in the same city or physically or whatever together. If instead you could make all of this configurable so that tomorrow when situations change or technology change, the work you've done in the past does not get eroded, right? You need to start thinking about configurability. Observability. This is another one, because the lovely thing about data and sort of doing it digitally is that you get to see what's happening in the system from a distance. And therefore, if you design from that from the start, you will be able to notice errors before they happen. You will be able to give high availability and reliability to your users, in turn sort of gets trust, because one of the big reasons, even though digital transactions everybody wants to push through, one of the big problems is that if there is no reliability, if the transaction sometimes will take even 2 minutes or 3 minutes, I have heard stories from people where they get offended, right? Because see, you and I, if we go to a store, we're well dressed, we speak English, people usually trust that we are not trying to scam them, right? We're not trying to take away that 500 rupees or 1000 rupees also at a store that we might have been spending. But if somebody who's not that well to do, they go to digital payments and they try to make a payment and it fails, many of them will get offended and pay by cash, because it's their honor. My credibility is at stake when I say I will make a payment and I'm not able to actually pay. So there are very cultural things that that software can affect if you don't have high reliability and trust in your software. And therefore, thinking about that and thinking about diagnosis from the very start is a very good idea when you're designing these systems. Sorry, for some reason scalable. This is more a technical aspect. If you're going to design a system or whatever, just make sure that the way you do it does not require hand holding or magic of any sort, right? Like, you don't need a developer to compress a button every day at 11 a.m. for it to work. It should work automatically. If suddenly you get 2,000 extra users tomorrow or 200,000 extra users tomorrow, it should still work. There is nothing about that system that has been patched together or made shoddily. Resilience, similar idea that when you're making these subsystems, can you think about how they'll work in unexpected scenarios? I'm just going to sort of run through these. Extensibility, because the thing is, software is not static. It's made to deal with one situation. It's made to deal with real life, and therefore that thinking again should be in your design when you're designing the software. Privacy and security, we can take this offline and do questions, but the idea really is, if you make something that is leaky inherently, and then you worry why privacy happened, why security failures happened, that's not going to work. You should assume that this is an attack surface from the very first day and design accordingly, which means end-to-end encryption and a bunch of techniques that are known right now. And finally, trust by design, right? Because ultimately, you need to have something that you can't go and say, oh, sorry, system failed. Oh, sorry, this went wrong, right? If you want the system to be high trust, you have to design it to be high trust in those manner from the very start. This is more, multi-tenancy is more the idea, but where we are going with this is, once you have these infrastructure blocks and that's what you're thinking, and have this team maybe, or this group of people separate from the people who are making solutions, what you notice is that the incentives of this team, which is thinking slightly more longer term, and the incentives which are looking to solve immediate problems, and both these teams benefit from each other, because these will do rapid iterations, whereas this team can start thinking about the stable long-term processes and infrastructure that will be needed no matter how the problem changes. And separating these two softwares is very useful for everybody involved. I think, am I running out of time, Gautam?
Yeah, thank you, Tanuj. So I think we have some minutes left. I would like Lisa to take up one question as well. But thank you again. And I think what you did there for Tanuj, I think for me, and I think for many of us, this is a very big and different new world. And you basically talked us through the different pieces which take time to put in place in terms of infrastructure. So for Dr. Anand and yourself, I have one question. I have one question for both of you. It's the same question. I'd like you to both take it up in your own perspective. So the question is what I'd like to think about. So think of a problem statement we have. So this particular program, BRLPS Yojana, is to reach 100,000 tons initially. For that, we have something like 2,000 frontline workers, and these people are spread about different parts of Bihar. Their network access will be varying, the device they have, etc., etc. So my question to you both is: can you give us a couple of ideas, just to speak for a minute or so, on what should we thinking out in terms of design, their training? How can we make it more accessible for them? How can we make it easy for them? So when we talk about digital infrastructure, digital use, what should we thinking about for this particular set of people, which will probably have some device, maybe network issues, and may not have so much digital literacy? So Dr. Anand, would you like to share your thoughts first?
Yes. So I'll repeat the one statement I made before. Nothing is perfect here, but don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. I'll give two examples where we sorted such a problem out. One, connectivity in the sub-centers was poor, but the primary health center was good enough. So rather than have the ASHA workers log in individually, in your case because they would have a phone, we got them together in one place, which is only 2 kilometers away, or 3 kilometers maximum. So they came to one center, and that's where they all managed to learn, right? There are innovations, like when I showed you the photograph of many ASHA workers together. So we had a Bluetooth speaker and mic, which they passed around, so everybody could be heard. You can do that. The second thing also is, we just went and said, they have to be trained. I have to find a way. So in Northeast, you have a problem of connectivity is even worse than a lot of land area. So we went actually, we went to the tea garden people and said, listen, you guys have got fantastic communication. Would you allow us to have these people come 1 hour every 2 weeks? You'll be surprised, Gautam. We never got a no. A lot of our clinics in Assam ran out of tea gardens in somebody else's corporate office. You just give us access. Third and final one would be, in Bihar, mental health addiction was a big problem after prohibition came in, etc. and stuff. So NIMANS ran this program, and even doctors at that time, this was 3 years ago, weren't very tech savvy or didn't have smartphones all the place. Believe me, 31 districts were connected by doctors on their cell phone alone, and the whole program ran on cell phone. When smartphones came in, I never forget this. We were doing one of these training events, and I was the moderator for that live clinic. And I said, NIMANS does it on cell phone. They said, Dr. Anand, this entire clinic is on cell phones. Nobody could make out. They found a very nice little place where they could put their cell phone, fixed it. It looked like a computer. Nobody made out. So you'll have to innovate totally. But my point here is, it can be reached. Doesn't matter if you can't reach out to 2,000 of them. 1,000 of them, not a bad idea. Start with it. And last is, I was proven 197,000 times wrong in Maharashtra when I said, no, the people can't learn Zoom while talking on it. They learned. They found their way. So I would say, go for it. You'll manage. Whatever you've got, let's go with it.
Then thank you, Dr. Anand. You gave us a principle there, which is like don't aim for perfect. Thank you for those adaptations for the ground level. We will definitely be looking at that in terms of what adaptations, small gatherings of people, or small device enhancements. That's really helpful. Thank you. Same question for you, Mr. Tanuj, and you can take it how you want. But my question, you can answer it as you wish. But my question is, what do we do for this ground level team in terms of access and usability? Could you share some thoughts, please?
So I think I want to echo some of what he says, and because I'll tell you the Aadhaar experience in this story also is that when the Aadhaar team had this big decision, we were talking about 1 billion people data. It was the biggest data set that had been put together at that time in 2009. So therefore, all your IBM, Microsoft, everybody showed up and said you must use our systems. You don't want to use this open source, this nonsense stuff which people do, because that's for like low level projects. As a country of India, don't you want our corporate solution or whatever? And the architects at the time, Pramod, who helped with this presentation also, said very clearly that boss, technology has a curve. There are certain trend lines. You can build for today, or you can build for 5 years into the future. Because anyway, it's going to take you 5 years to build it, right? And if you start looking at that point of time in the future and you look at the trends, I don't think connectivity and access to devices, if you look at, there's anything in the data of the past 3 years that tells you that we will not be on that upward trajectory. So I would say let's just, in fact, if anything, we are late for the connectivity we are going to have by the time we build these software and tools and technology and infrastructure. We are not anywhere close to our work is not done. It's cut out for us. So number one, we are building for the future. Act like the future is, going to happen. Don't worry about that. Separate that concern. So access, connectivity, no. But usability and habits, I think that's where our mindset is still broken, because we think the apps and the way we use them is going to be the way they use them. Instead, you need to figure out what they do, their behaviors, and see how you can fit into that. So I keep telling people, hey, if people already use WhatsApp and they figured it out, even literacy and communication through voice notes and video, why don't you instead make content for WhatsApp? Rather than trying to create a WhatsApp clone that is your app because it will have your logo. So if we can put our egos aside and design solutions for what is working on the ground, rather than trying to fit what our idea of a solution onto these people, I think we'll make significant progress.
Right. Thank you, and thank you very much, Dr. I think my own reflections from both your presentation and the session is we have a lot to learn, but not only do we have a lot to learn, we have a lot out there that we can learn from. So I'm sure our team will be in touch with both of you even afterwards, in the sense of how we continue to progress the type of digital infrastructure that's a fit for the JEEViKA team, for the Southern team, for part in Yojana team. And I'd like to thank you again, Dr. Anand, Tanuj Bhojwani, for coming to share your very insightful experiences. So next, I would like to welcome Doris King. Doris King is a program manager with Co-Impact. I'd like to give a very brief introduction of Co-Impact. I'd say Co-Impact are a very interesting organization for two reasons. One, something at the very center of their work is thinking about where is the evidence to scale up for impact, and then how do we learn from that. And the other one is system strengthening, and the conference, as we all know, is very much about system strengthening. And Co-Impact have been a very generous donor for this work, and a very good partner, a very good thought partner for us to be thinking about when we're doing large-scale work, instead of simply looking at program inputs and outputs, etc. How do we get this whole system to work? And this conference has been very much about that across these themes. So with that introduction, Doris, it's a pleasure having Co-Impact as a partner for this work. But over to you, Doris, for your talk, please.
Thank you, Gautam. Thank you, everyone. And hello. I'm so excited to join you all today and have been listening in on the sessions. Many thanks to Mr. Bala Murugan and the team for the invitation. So my name is Doris King. I'm Program Manager with Co-Impact. For those of you who don't know us so well, we're a philanthropic collaborative bringing together philanthropists, foundations, and other funders to jointly support systems change efforts in the areas of health, economic inclusion, and economic opportunities. And I've been the account lead in our partnership with the SJY program, so I've really had the pleasure of seeing how this has developed over the past 2 years, and I'm so excited you are getting into this next phase of taking a system strengthening approach. So having kind of had the whirlwind tour with the technical experts on data and technology, I think I wanted to spend the time to take a step back with you and really share with you why we're so excited about partnering with the SJY program, and also what we see as the powerful potential of systems change that it really offers through your work. So really starting from our beginning of the partnership with SJY, we've known that the research done by Professor Banerjee's team at JPAL and others at the graduation program has really shown itself to be one of the most effective programs serving the poorest, enabling people to lift themselves out of extreme poverty. But that the challenge has been for NGO delivery to how to get over the capacity ceiling of reaching scale. So working with government agencies such as JEEViKA, so that you can implement the program and really integrate it into the broader public system to overcome the scale issues, that was the very exciting prospect. So really how to reach scale and do it well so that the poorest can really benefit. The promise of what this type of government and civil actor collaboration, such as between JEEViKA, Unbundling and JPAL, bringing together different expertise can achieve. These were some of the reasons why we chose to partner with SJY. And we also know that we're not the only ones excited about this program. We know the world will be looking at what you're seeking to achieve. What SJY can show for graduation implementation by a government agency at this scale, reaching 100,000 households, is really unprecedented and very, very powerful. Of course, first and foremost, what's most important are the real improvements in the lives of the poorest people in Bihar. But we also know that SJY will serve as a model in India through the NRLM and beyond, and demonstrating to the world what's possible for governments to achieve for the poorest, and that lessons that you will share. So this is really why we're so happy to be supporting you all, and SJY's potential to be transformational and leave a powerful legacy. We are so excited for why you're looking at the system strengthening elements, because we do think this is what's really important to make a sustainable, deep and lasting change in the lives of people at scale. So there are three aspects in particular, if I have time to hone in on, that I would like to cover. And really we think it's so important because of what it means for sustainability, for equity, especially in gender, and for inclusion. And we really think these are key to helping the SJY program fully realize its potential and promise. And much of it builds on what you already do, and also what other speakers have offered. So firstly, turning to sustainability. I mean, we really see this, and we're sure you are too, that this is not only just a chance to provide a demonstration of what the ultra poor can achieve and how they can be supported by government, but really what it would mean to be a new norm, right, for the poorest to be included and to be served. And we know that right now it's been so blessed with having strong government backing leadership from Mr. Chaudhry, Mr. Balamurugan. But when you start thinking about new norms for the poorest to continue for 10, 20 and many more years, a question that we just have for you all is, bearing in mind how you might want to build the relationships and the capacities, the rules and procedures and motivations to really help this initiative endure and last well into the future, so that many more can be served. Because when we look that far into the horizon, we do know that changes are inevitable in leadership and personnel and agendas. And we do think that taking a strong systems change approach, building these various critical systemic strands, so that even when some parts change or falter, there'll be enough others to support it, to really embed this program into the system in place, so that it's not just here for today, but here for the long term as well. So making use of this moment right now to build the critical strands, we see this as super important. And just a perspective from our side is we also see the system as very broadly. So not just the JEEViKA institutional system itself, not just the community level institutions and structure, but really encouraging you to think about society at large. And also over the last few days or so, I know really your priorities have been thinking about what are the immediate things that needed to be done. And that's very rightly so, of enhancing capacity through digital infrastructure and training and knowledge building and data use in systems. But we would encourage you to think as well and continue to come back and revisit periodically, whether alongside the building of this capacity, the more kind of hardware systems elements, whether the softer elements are in place too and continue to be so in terms of relationships, incentives, motivations, of stakeholders and decision makers, of the mid-levels, of the frontline workers and of the community, to continue to be in place to ensure that this is a conducive systemic environment to support this program in the long run. The second aspect I'd like to turn to is equity, especially in terms of gender. And this is, again, where we're very excited about, the graduation programming coming together with the JEEViKA platform and the community-driven development aspect. So we know both the mainstay of JEEViKA's work, community work, and in the SGY program, there's a strong emphasis on serving women. But we really do see what's truly transformational is for these people, for the women, to have not simply be served by the program as a beneficiary or a recipient, but for women to truly be able to drive the decision making. So following JEEViKA's work, and also from what the speakers have covered in day one of the workshop, in terms of how the role that community institutions can play, the growth of that, we really do think it's an immense opportunity as you think about the accountability, decision-making structure and so forth, to think about how to build in this really significant role that women can play in leadership and decision-making. And I have a time check here. So finally, moving on to the theme that I would like to touch upon, inclusion. We at Co-Impact often think about this together with constituency voice and seeking systemic input and feedback. So I recall Vinay saying in day one that inclusion is such a strong ethical value and strength of JEEViKA, and has reminded that the most effective innovations often come from the Didis themselves. And this is something that really resonates with us, and we are strongly in support of. In particular, inclusion of the poorest and marginalized, not only in terms of being served, but also in terms of having a say and being heard and inputted into how the systems and the programs are designed. Building this mechanism in for regular feedback, for this to be taken into account in implementation from all the various constituencies, from the Didis, from the master resource persons, as well as the communities and the participants, to hear what works and what doesn't, and enable innovative ideas to come through from the ground. We all think that this would make the system work and the program work so much stronger. And we've just seen today the technology that could possibly help you, enable you to get that feedback much easier. And then there's a second element to that too. So aside from the fundamental value of respect and dignity from being heard, we also see this as being important in building local ownership and organized constituency who would really stand for and have the motivation to fight for the SGY program in the long run. That element that I talked about in terms of sustainability to really help this initiative be so much stronger in withstanding forces of oppositional change. So in closing, I'd just like to reiterate how excited we are in supporting the SGY program and the potential that we see in the synergies bringing together this well-proven graduation model with really what the power of JEEViKA's effective community-driven development platform has to offer. To build a lasting legacy of deep and sustained change. We're excited for this, what this means for Bihar, for the poorest, and also for how you can inspire others to be across the globe. So thanks again to Mr. Balamurugan, to the team, and to you all for demonstrating powerfully what's possible. And I am so excited to continue to follow your journey. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Doris, for that. And in a few minutes, you took us through many, both large and small components of what system strengthening means. And we know in this conference, we're touching 5 key themes, and these are our more immediate themes in a sense. How can we think, how can this program be strengthened for the women, for the families and the households? But I think what we look forward to, and I think you covered very well in your talk, is that there's much more to do. We want to take the long-sighted lens as well. We also want to look at some of these more nuanced aspects, of, whether it's with regards to gender, empowerment, etc. And these are all parts we look forward to in the journey of how we strengthen the system. And we look forward to partnering, continue our partnership with Co-Impact as you continue to guide and inform us of how we do that. So thank you very much for that, Doris. So next, I will now introduce Mr. Adit Ranjan. Mr. Adit Ranjan is the State Project Manager for Sadat JEEViKA Uparjan Yojana. He has been with JEEViKA for many years. He's been with the SJY right from the very start. And in some ways, I would describe his role as someone who's very much in charge of the execution of a very large, complex scale-up, which has required a lot of attention, innovation, as well as a lot of attention to detail. So Ajitji, please would you talk about the lessons learned as well? Over to you, Ajitji.
Thank you, Gautam. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, sir. So, about the learning from this webinar, first I will focus on the communitization part. The day one is all about the communitization. How can we communitize the entire processes and empower the community and build the capacity to provide services to these ultra poor? The first learning is how can we communitize the entire process. The second is about the circumstances in which the ultra poor are. So we have to provide a ventilator to these ultra poor households, whether it is the insurance, individual life insurance or health insurance, or whether it's vaccination and immunization of the livestock. So we have to provide a ventilator to these households and redefine the word social safety net for these ultra poor households. The third learning is on the knowledge repository. We are talking about the knowledge repository, but we have to build some immersions. We have to build some provide capacity building, coaching, and hand-holding support rather than facilitate these ultra poor households in the initial state. So a knowledge repository, immersion sites, MRPs has to build their capacity. So all these has to be catered in these years to support these ultra poor households. Fourth is about the data analytics, which we talked today. Data analytics for service delivery and provide decision-making support, performance management. So all these can come together and form a powerful tool to inform, to provide advisory to these ultra poor, these CEOs, community-based organization, and to the management to provide the services to these ultra poor within the time frame. And the fourth is the innovation. We have to innovate, and we have to have a basket of livelihoods for these ultra poor. So we have to have innovations within the system and innovate, replicate, and then have a robust system for the feedback. So that's the 5 learning which I'm penning down for these ultra poor and SJY. Thank you. Thank you, Gautam.
Yes. And thank you, Ajitji, for a very smart and sharp sum up from what we've drawn from this conference. This conference, I think, as we all know, it's been the first time we have moved to an online mode. That online mode, in some ways, has meant a tremendous range and richness of speakers who come on board. I think it's been excellent as well that the connectivity has been very good. We've been able to hear a lot of very good ideas across this grid. Thanks for that sum up. So next, I will welcome Mr. Shri Arvind Kumar Chaudhary, who's the Principal Secretary for Rural Development. I know, Mr. Chaudhary, this particular program, this BRLPS-JEEViKA Yojana, not only have you mentored, but I know this has been very much in your heart for many, many years, in the sense, how do we reach this set of people? So we very much look forward to your remarks, your thoughts in terms of both this conference and how we go forward in terms of strengthening the system for BRLPS-JEEViKA Yojana. Please, Mr. Chaudhary.
Thank you, Gautam. I would first of all congratulate Bala and his entire team and all the sponsors of this program, this webinar. Gautam rightly said, though COVID posed a challenge, but using technology, we actually have been able to get such people who probably wouldn't have been able to come here in person. So in a way, I think this threw up a new opportunity of inviting such people from such diverse fields and gain from their experiences. I go back to how JEEViKA was formulated, how it rolled out slowly, and why SJY was formulated. So in any large-scale community-driven program, inclusion and exclusion, both kinds of errors are possible. We always had this focus that a bit of inclusion error is all right, but there should be no exclusion error. No one who should be part of this program should be missed out. And that's why the targeting in JEEViKA was planned in that way. But we all know that in spite of all that effort, there are households which are left out, not because the overall team is not working hard to get them into the fold, but because of there's some inherent issues, some inherent problems
and also maybe some design flaws of our program where how we try to induct them could be the issue. So with these things in mind, we started a pilot. I think JPL and Bandhan have been with us since 2016-17. We have been working out on the pilots, many good things to learn, many fallacies. So we learned from our mistakes also. We got an opportunity to design this program in 2018. Though it came in slightly different context, but it was entirely supported by the entire political team in Bihar, as well as the bureaucratic leadership also. And what was very interesting, I just call it providence. So we were planning to design this program at scale, and that was the time when Mr. Hashmi visited Bihar, representing Co-Impact, and we got some of the best experts in the world who have worked on the graduation approach to help us design this program. Bala led his team in a most amazing way. He has been a remarkable leader. And under his leadership and under the guidance of all the experts, we designed SJY in such a way that it could reach out to the people, it could have an impact in their life, and also it could be scaled up fast. Something that I heard just from Mr. Sunil Anand, when the way ECO expanded, the way they overcame the challenges, that is the spirit. Once you start rolling out anything, you realize that there are bound to be many problems, but then you are also able to find solutions and just move ahead. Mr. Bhojwani also said very nicely that something which may be a very big challenge as today, maybe 5 years down the line, it will no longer remain that kind of a challenge. So with these things in mind, the entire program was designed. Ajit has very rightly said, how do we ensure that this kind of a program is communitized and owned entirely by the community? There was a very big risk also in carrying out this program of impacting the original JEEViKA program. Because in the original JEEViKA program, we are not providing individual subsidies. But over here, that is what we are starting with. So it was a very big risk as to how this is going to impact the original program. And that is where I think the kind of design that has been created finally for this. The community members themselves are the drivers. They are the ones who are finding out the families and identifying as to who among them are the ones who should be included in this. They were also able to identify all the households which are left out for one reason or the other, and they have been able to rope them in. And I missed the first day seminar, but I was informed that the Didi who spoke about the village organization, the way they are leading this program, that has been very encouraging. In fact, they are our real inspiration. Whenever we have any doubts, I mean, if you just go and visit any 4 or 5 village organization or self-help group meetings and just listen to these women, you come back charged. So, Mr. Abhijit Banerjee visited us a little while before he got the Nobel Prize. And I feel so privileged that in this very chamber of mine he had come, and we chatted about this program and discussed about so many things. Second was, how do you scale it fast? Because reaching 100,000 families within a period of 24 months was no small task. And that too, maintaining the quality ensuring that you are reaching out to the right families, ensuring that you are reaching out to them in the right way. You are not cutting down on any processes. You are not cutting down on any quality parameters. So that has also been done very systematically. The team of professionals who are working for this program are remarkable. The support from Co-Impact has been very, very instrumental and very helpful in creating a very strong PMU, in designing the MIS, which is very robust and useful and very flexible and dynamic. Doris has, in her remarks, said, and I entirely agree with her, and I am a systems man. I do not believe in individuals and leaders. No. We must have very good systems in place which should be such that they are replicable and they can carry on their own. That is why this program is actually in the hands of the community leaders. Our role is only that of the facilitator. And we have been so lucky that Government of Bihar has supported this program in such a wholehearted way. Honorable Chief Minister said that any amount of funding that is needed, that will not be a constraint for such programs. So with that kind of backing, we have actually moved ahead very fast. I think in the last 3 days, the kind of learnings that we have had, the kind of insights that we have got, I'll request the team to identify what have been the bottlenecks so far, what have been the shortcomings so far, and focus on them to ensure that they are also taken care of. Good things are definitely good and they should be replicated. But if there are small irritants and if they are not addressed to at the right time, they in the long run cause many problems. And I have always known that if we move in the right direction and with maintaining quality, our pace is immaterial. Whether we are moving very fast or very slow, we will ultimately reach the scale or the goal that we are aiming at. Since such programs grow organically, so initially the progress is slow and we have to be very patient during that phase when the progress is very slow, when you are putting in so much effort, but actually in terms of numbers you are not getting feeling you are not reaching to that many targets. But once a skill reaches, once they start growing organically, after that you in very small time reach the scale. And I am so glad to see that the identification of more than 100,000 households is already done. More than 60% of them have been provided all sorts of support. Even during COVID, the team worked and some extra support were provided to such households to ensure that they tide over to these tough times. And I'm sure with the learnings from this conference, the team will further move ahead. I thank Bala, I thank Gautam for providing me this opportunity to talk to all of you. I hope the participants who are there, and they are our team members, they are the ones who are actually implementing it on field, will also be somewhat getting some insights from the entire conference and rolling out many of the learnings in whatever they are doing. I wish all of them very best and wish the program the best. And I do hope, like Doris said, that this actually becomes a model which could be replicated in whichever place it is possible, whether it is within India or globally elsewhere. Because such problems of poverty remain an universal. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chaudhary. This is a 3-day conference. We did a very good reminder that this effort is multiple years. And I like what you said, that we have learned, sometimes we've fallen, we picked ourselves up again, and there has been this accumulation of a wisdom and an expertise in the team to do something that right now is very impressive in terms of the reach of these people. Your mentoring has always been valuable, and I think you're right. So we think it's a professional effort, it's a management effort, but you asked us to rethink many times. It very much, the community is at the center. We are supporting, facilitating, and what can we do to empower the community? That's the real scale up, and I fully agree with you. And then Mr. Balaji, he's been a very amazing person making this happen. I just wanted to share one very quick reflection. So over 2 years back, I remember a very late night meeting. And Mr. Bala, you may remember we're in Biscoman. There are about 25 of us in the room. And you told us then, I'm saying, one, this is a work of wisdom. The other work, it's work of the heart. You all told us, stay here, don't move, don't leave this project for the next 2-3 years, and we'll be very hard. Many times we may feel like leaving, but we'll be satisfied. We'll be doing the right work. And Mr. Bala, I think as we look around, of those 25 people, I think most of us, we're here still. We accepted your invitation. You asked that very late night when you told us to stay with this, and we are here. So Mr. Bala, you've done an amazing job on this team. And over to you, Mr. Bala, the CEO of JEEViKA, for the vote of thanks, please.
Thank you, Gautam. First of all, I would like to extend sincere and then our heartfelt thanks to our Principal Secretary Arvind sir on behalf of JEEViKA and JEEViKA family, because his guidance and then and also whenever we comes under pressure for numbers, protection from his side, it's always amazing, and that's thank you so much for that, sir, and without your support we could not have moved this far. Thank you so much, sir, and for all the guidance and then support. And also I would like to thank all the partners, JPAL, Bandhan, Co-Impact, World Bank, NRLM, and all the partners who are supporting us in doing this program in this particular manner. And also I would like to thank all the speakers from day one. I'm using this platform to thank them, and will be in fact sending them separate thank you note for all the speakers. All the 3 days are extremely useful. I would like to recall your visit, and then when we started doing pilot, that was also very instrumental. In fact, we had a meeting with our Principal Secretary Arvind sir when we wanted to do the pilot for 2,000 families, and you were very consistent in your effort to do the follow-up. That was very useful. And also I would like to put it on record, Paramveer's contribution in the initial stages of bringing in Co-Impact and also designing the program in the initial days, and also continuously giving his input. Paramveer, and then Ajit, of course, from day one, and also our SPMU team, be it Mukesh, or Prashant, or all the team members who contributed in designing. Thank you so much for, I would like to use this, this particular occasion to remember and then remember their contribution and thanking them. And again, without HR, it's not possible to do things. So we could able to form a very formidable and then energetic young team. We have young professionals. You also briefly remembered that meeting, and then many of them are still staying. The team is very committed. We have more than 2,000 MRPs, and then good PMU, and then that particular team, BPMs, and then we have the entire team which is involved in the implementation of SJY. It's superb, and then a big thanks to them. And at the end, I would like to make this commitment on behalf of implementation team and also larger JEEViKA family that we are committed to this cause. We'll do everything possible. A lot of learnings from these 3 days. We had an excellent presentation today, and we had that one particular message from Dr. Sunil that we need to listen to the stakeholders, not from experts speaking to them and then giving all the advice. Solutions comes from them. That's what. Now, I remember when I was speaking about it, that's one of the key messages we normally remember and then reiterate whenever we meet our implementation team. That's a message I normally get from our principal secretaries are also. Again, I would like to thank all the participants and also all the speakers. Arvind sir again for taking time out and then making this event successful. The most important thing is that we had important lessons. I think we'll do everything possible and then we are committed to this cause. Thank you so much, Gautam, and thank you, sir. You are on mute, Gautam.
Yes. So thank you very much, Mr. Balamurugan. So thank you everybody for this conference. We will have on the website itself, we will later have the recordings of these different sessions. So if anybody's missed a particular session, it will be available there. And we will also have the team will put together a conference documentation to hold together all these learnings. But as Mr. Chaudhary and Mr. Bala said, this is very much about are now looking forward, taking these learnings for the system strengthening and then really building up on some very strong work for the people in Bihar. So thank you everyone, and we may now close the conference.
Thank you.